right now, the Super Bowl ads for a 30-second spot cost around $7 million. The range is probably about 6.8 to 7, depending upon how long you've been in the game, if you're a newer advertiser or have been grandfathered into deals. But it's pretty much on par with where it was last year. So it's stayed relatively steady. Yeah, I mean, several celebrities are always an important part of Super Bowl advertising. Brands really want to bring in names that are household names, easily recognizable, so that the most people, the 100 million people or so that watch on game day, feel like they know who these celebrities are. So yeah, we've seen big names like Will Ferrell. We are seeing Ben Affleck actually in a Super Bowl ad for Dunkin Donuts' first Super Bowl ad. So that's interesting. The ad hasn't come out yet, but we're hearing that he will star in that one. We're seeing Anna Faris for Avocados of Mexico, Snoop Dogg in the Skechers ad. So there are a lot of big names spanning music and acting and all of these types of celebrities you can imagine. Yeah, so Anheuser-Busch gave up its category exclusivity. So what that means is that you'll see other alcohol and beer brands advertising in the game. We'll have Molson Coors and a Heineken in there for the first time in multiple decades. You'll see Remy Martin and Crown Royal. So the whole alcohol beer category will look vastly different than it has looked for, over 3 decades. The Super Bowl is a great time for brands to play into nostalgia. They typically do it as a way really to entertain people, the audience that are watching really know and love these, intellectual property that they're reutilizing. So we're seeing a couple of brands redoing and repurposing big movies or TV shows. We have Popcorners doing Breaking Bad and bringing back the Breaking Bad cast for a remake of Breaking Bad for Popcorners. We have a couple of other brands doing Clueless. Rakuten brought back Alicia Silverstone to reprise her role as Cher in Clueless. There is a Caddyshack for Michelob Ultra. So some really interesting IP names and brands that people all know. So it should be fun to watch. Yeah, I do think that it's hard to break through all of the noise when you see so many ads really leaning into humor, lightheartedness. A lot sort of start to blur together. They become a mishmash of celebrities and musicians coming together. It's hard to differentiate who is with who and what brand. So I do think it becomes really hard. And it's really hard these days to also do humor well. You don't, as a brand, want to alienate consumers or do a joke and put out a joke that might be offensive to someone. So it's hard to be funny, but also be mindful of the humor. So, that's just always hard to stand out in the game using like those kinds of traits that we're used to seeing. The Servants Christian Foundation, which is an organization that is backed by different people and organizations, are doing a rebrand of Jesus. And they have had those ads running during the NFL, some ads, but they will drop 2 new commercials during the game that are meant to, do a rebrand on Jesus. Usually the first ad slot, like right after kickoff, that's a big one because that's when everyone is tuning in. If the game is a total like wipeout, usually that fourth quarter is a hard one for brands because they never know. It's either great if the game is really close, or it's a tough one if people start tuning out if it's going one way or the other. So that's always a hard one for brands. Yeah, it's interesting, especially because you see 2 brands that recently announced layoffs. You have Google, which, of course, announced their massive layoffs, and Workday, which also announced layoffs recently. They both have Super Bowl commercials. And there's always this interesting conversation when that happens about spending, around $7 million for a commercial after laying off, potentially thousands of people. And, marketing, it's interesting during a economic downturn. Typically the idea is that you want to keep your brand out there and keep on marketing even when times are tougher, because when you come back and times are better, that's the brands that people remember. So that's generally like the rule of thumb that brands like to follow. And the Super Bowl is obviously an enormous time to be out there. That being said, we see a couple of brands leaning into, or at least touching on, the cost saving conversation, Rakuten being one of them to help save money when you shop. That's one that is kind of leaning into that. So not a lot of brands though going, very focused on a message of savings or cost savings during any sort of economic downturn. So there's a PSA. It actually won't run nationally in the game. That's a regional ad that will air. That is a work that an agency Publicis is doing to help destigmatize people who have cancer from feeling like they can't talk about it in the workplace.